So I may.
Hold on, I see in the chat he's here. Hold on, let me.
Wonderful.
Right, Duncan, let me just enable your microphone. Let's see if that's hopefully.
So Duncan is going to start us off with information about courier fraud and romance fraud. So over to you, Duncan. Thanks very much.
Let me just try and find him in the chat. If I can do it from chat bit. Sorry, Linda, I'm struggling to find him in the actual chat box bit. So I wonder whether you should still go first, and I'll just try and.
Okay. Okay, if that's all right with you, Duncan, then I shall start on the general.
Hear us? Can you turn your camera on?
Good morning. I can hear you. Hopefully you can now hear me.
Yes.
Amazing. If I share my screen, let's really dabble with technical stuff. I'm hoping you'll be able to see my PowerPoint.
Yes, can see that.
Perfect. Well, apologies for the technical issues. I'll go ahead if that's okay with you, Linda, and I'll just crack on. Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for attending this seminar, and thank you for inviting me to speak. My name is Duncan Wynne. I am a Detective Inspector with Thames Valley Police, and my current role is the head of the Central Fraud Unit. So I'm responsible for the investigation of fraud, but most importantly, the prevention and detection of people becoming victims of fraud. So I've entitled my slide, "It's Only Fraud." And I think we have a really poor misconception across the UK that fraud is a harmless crime, that fraud is a business crime and it's actually victimless, which we know is absolutely not the case. So mainly what I want to do today is a little bit myth busting, but also explain how you can protect yourself from becoming a victim of fraud. Just 2 seconds while I get the right screen up here. There we go. Perfect. Is my screen moving? Because I'm on a dual screen now and I can't see.
Yeah.
Perfect. So what we need to do in order to tackle fraud is understand the problem with fraud. So we rely on a lot of statistical information in order to tell us exactly what the problem is with fraud. And actually, when we look at this information, the figures are actually quite shocking. So let's step through these. Fraud represents currently 41% of all crime. So when you think of all the crimes that we see on the television and the newspapers around violent crime, around burglary, shoplifting, stolen vehicles, 41% of all crime is fraud. And that's a really interesting statistic. We're more likely to be a victim of fraud than any other crime. There were 4.5 million frauds recorded up until March 2022, and we know that fraud is on the rise. There were 3.6 million adult victims. The loss, we can only guess, is in the tens of billions, so a massive threat to the UK economy, particularly in the austere times that we're living in. There were 1 million reported frauds, so we know that fraud is massively underreported. The increase since 2020 is nearly 30%. There were only 7,000 positive outcomes, so the police are failing in respect of their investigation of fraud. And the reason for that detection rate being so poor is we have only put 1% of our policing resources into fraud. So over time, we've focused on what we consider to be the crimes that affect people the most, and we've let fraud go under the radar, and that's what we're addressing at the moment. So 1 in 13 UK adults have been a victim of fraud, which again, another very shocking statistic. And we also know that 300 victims have reported considering suicide as a result of fraud. So the impact can be very severe. So it's not only fraud. it's not a victimless crime. It's certainly not just a white collar crime, and it's certainly not harmless. So we need to tackle it, and things are changing nationally. So we have very clear national direction around what our approach to fraud should be. And this really comes into 3 pillars. The first one being stopping and blocking. So can we stop fraudsters targeting victims at source? So this is by stopping phishing emails, stopping text messages, stopping direct contact with victims, stopping the use of victim lists, etc., etc., making sure people's information is locked down. The second pillar, which is essentially what I'm going to talk to you about today, and that's why I'm here and that's why you're here, is to empower the public to be able to protect themselves. So give the public the information they need in order to protect themselves from being a victim of fraud. And the third one is what my teams do in their day job, is we go out and we relentlessly pursue fraudsters to bring them to justice, put them in prison, and stop them committing offences against vulnerable victims. So on the subject of vulnerable victims, fraud covers everything. So fraud covers absolutely everything, from somebody going into a corner shop, picking up a packet of chicken, changing the price ticket from £2 to 50p, going up to the counter and paying the reduced price for the packet of chicken. Very low level, right the way through to multi-million-pound complex ticket scams. If you've seen the news this week, there's lots of ticket scams regarding Taylor Swift tickets going on. So very organised, sophisticated, multi-million-pound frauds, and everything in between. So what we need to do as a police is look at what we call the high harm fraud. So what are the frauds that target the most vulnerable people? Which frauds have the highest losses to victims? Which frauds have the biggest impact emotionally and financially on victims? And which frauds are being committed by serious organised criminals using the most sophisticated methods? So that's what we classify as high harm fraud. At the moment, there are 2 main high harm frauds that we're concerned about and which we want to get out and empower the public to protect themselves from. The first of those is courier fraud, and this can be one of the most devastating types of fraud. So it often targets the elderly and the most vulnerable, and it often targets people via their landline telephone. So we talk a lot at the moment about cybercrime and cyber attacks, and people being targeted via very sophisticated methods and through the use of technology, when actually courier fraud, the enabler for courier fraud is generally the landline telephone, and that clearly targets a certain demographic of the public. It also gives an element of safety. If someone's sending you a call on your landline telephone, it feels kind of safe, and it's targeting isolated victims in their own home. And the way courier fraud works is that the criminals will create a sense of panic. So you may receive a phone call out of the blue while you're in the middle of doing something at home, and it's somebody sounding very serious and very panicked, saying your bank account is being compromised. Somebody is spending money from your bank account. And the commonest form of this fraud is that the suspect will tell you that somebody has just been caught using your bank card in a high-end shop in London, which you will know is not you and not authorised by you. So, for example, if your name is Jane Smith, they will say that a young female called Josephine Smith has been caught using your bank card in Harrods to buy £5,000 worth of goods. We've caught them, but because your account has been compromised, we need you to put your bank cards into an envelope and we'll send somebody from the bank to come and collect them. Or we need you to go to the bank and withdraw all your money out, put it into an envelope, take it home, and we'll come and collect it for safety. Or we need to transfer all your money out of your bank account into a safe account with the bank, and we'll give you the details of those to keep your money safe. Now, that is a common courier fraud. Because of the urgency, because it's come via the landline telephone, because they purport to know information about you and your account, because they are perceiving that they are in a position of trust, i.e. a bank official, a fraud investigator, even a police officer, they will obviously want you to trust them, and they're also giving the impression that they are helping you and protecting your money. And on that basis, victims do tend to respond to those requests and try and obviously comply and assist with the investigation into the money going missing from their bank. We've also found that when people have been unable to transfer money or draw money from their account, the fraudsters don't stop there, and they then instruct the victim to go to a high-end retail premise, i.e. a jeweller's, and buy high purchase items, high value, take them back to their home address and wait for a courier to come and collect them. And that is the common theme of all of these offences, is that they can send an anonymous courier, so somebody whose job is simply to drive to the victim's house, collect the cards, the cash or the jewellery, and take it to a location where the criminals can then also use those items. And that's why we call it courier fraud. So it's nothing to do with Amazon or DPD or any of the courier companies. It's simply that the whole offence relies on getting the victim's trust, asking them to put aside goods, their cards or some money, and they send somebody to collect it. What that means is the investigation is really difficult. It means that it's quite untraceable, particularly in terms of cash, and it means the criminals can, over a period of time, having gained the victim's trust, continue to remove money or goods from them until we get the opportunity to intervene. And what's really important is this is never the victim's fault. We've all had situations where we're really busy, there's stuff going on, we're stressed. Somebody suddenly phones you and tells you the money in your bank account is at risk, you must move it. Trust us, here's a bank. They've even left the call line open and said to the victim, hang up the phone the number on the back of your card and verify this with the bank. And by leaving the phone line open, when you ring the number on the back of your card, they put a fake dialing tone onto the call, and actually you're just going back to the criminals. So it's really important we learn the steps to protect ourselves from this particular type of fraud. So how do we protect yourselves? The first rule is your bank or the police will never call you to ask you to verify your personal details or PIN over the phone or offer to pick up your card by courier. If you get a call like this, just hang up and make contact with your bank through the normal channels you do. Make sure the line is cleared, make sure there's no dialing tone, or use a different phone. If you need to call your bank back to check, as we say, wait 5 minutes, just in case the call line has been left open, or get a friend or family member to do it, or go to the bank in person. Your debit and credit cards are only yours. The condition of you having that account is only you can use those cards, so they are personal to you. Even if someone else is a joint account holder on your account, you have separate cards for a reason, because your card is unique. Never, ever, ever let a stranger take your card off you. If in any doubt, cut it up and destroy it. If someone's telling you there's fraudulent activity on your bank account, cut your cards up within 24 hours. You can have new cards delivered to your home address, or you can go in the bank and collect new cards. So never, ever, ever hand over your card, and certainly never, ever, ever give out your PIN numbers. So learn to spot the signs. Someone claims from your bank or local police force, fraud department, tells you about fraudulent activity, but then starts asking you for personal information or your PIN number. Anybody genuine will not ask you for personal information, will not ask you for your PIN numbers, and will certainly not ask you to withdraw, transfer money, or make large purchases. They will always try to offer you peace of mind by sending them to pick up the card for you, as if they're doing you a favour, as if they're helping you. They'll always induce a sense of urgency. You are in control of that situation. You can listen to everything they've got to say without giving them any information at all. Just hang up the phone, take 5, think about what's happening, discuss it with a trusted friend, or contact your bank or the police for further advice and guidance if you're in any doubt at all. So that covers courier fraud, which is the first of the high harm frauds I wanted to talk about. And I'm now going to move on to the second one, which is romance fraud. And our advice in relation to romance fraud is, no matter how long you've been speaking to someone online, if you haven't met them in person and you're not 100% confident they are who they purport to be, you should never send them any money. Sadly, Fraudsters use romance platforms such as dating sites, such as social media sites, Facebook, Snapchat, WhatsApp, whatever it might be, in order to put themselves forward as somebody looking for love. Very sadly, that can often mean that somebody who genuinely believes they're starting out on a healthy relationship is actually getting into a relationship with a criminal, and that criminal's only intent is to take money from that victim, and they will be talking to many people trying to do the same thing. The form of romance fraud can be multiple, so not only can it be around lending money, it can be investing money, it can be depositing money to charities. There'll normally be lots of stories around somebody having some really bad luck, i.e. a family member falling ill and needing some money. There'll be in a car accident where people need to settle insurance, all of these things which in a normal healthy relationship you would be more than happy to help out your partner in those circumstances. But actually in an online relationship with somebody you've never met, that is high risk and really dangerous. So we advise people to never send money, to never purchase gift cards or give codes out for gift cards, to never transfer money, to never take loans out, certainly never to provide copies of personal documents such as passports and driving licenses, because then you are at severe risk of identity theft. Somebody can have enough information then to take out credit accounts and loans in your name. Never allow them access to your bank account, and never invest your own money on their behalf or on their advice. So even if they have got what seems to be an irresistible investment with really good returns, unless you 100% trust them and you've met them in the real world, we would advise never to get involved in those financial commitments. So the tactics of romance fraud criminals are really varied. And again, it's really important to stress when people are in those situations, they will make decisions with their hearts rather than their heads, which is perfectly understandable. And this is never the victim's fault. The victim is being deliberately targeted and is either vulnerable through the usual sense of the word, or because they're vulnerable by circumstance, because they're looking for love. In order to look for love online, there needs to be an element of trust, there needs to be an element of belief. So the tactics of romance fraud criminals, as you can see there, are multiple, but ultimately they all are looking at ways to engage in a relationship to develop up until the point where they can make the request for money. And the request for money is always the red flag, but prior to that there are some red flags we can look for. So the contact was out of the blue and it wasn't expected. The email is in poor grammar or using words and language which would not be associated with the genuine location of that person. So for example, using a dialect which may be different to the persona of the person that's been presented. They'll try and isolate you and make you the center of the universe rather than talking to friends and family to try and get you to engage only with them. There'll be lots of red flags around emergencies where your financial assistance is required. So I've already spoken about the family having an accident, the family being involved in medical procedures, etc. There'll be suggestions of secrecy, there'll be silent treatment, there'll be all of the red flags which may be red flags in a normal relationship, but if they lead to the request for money, then they should be of real concern. So what can we do to protect ourselves? Well, again, in the same way of courier fraud, be very wary of revealing personal information about yourself online. Remain on the main dating site's messaging platform and don't be tempted to go off the site onto a different messaging platform. Most dating websites, particularly the ones that are paid for, have some forms of security and vetting on there, but also a procedure for removing accounts of people who act inappropriately. So there is some safeguarding by using the main dating sites platform. Remember, anyone can pretend to be anyone online, particularly with the development of AI technology. So always do your own research, check pictures, check information you're sent, Google searches, etc., etc. Try and verify what you're being told is true. Always be wary if you're encouraged to keep things from your friends and family, and this applies to courier fraud and romance fraud. Talking to somebody else about concerns is so important because it sense checks your information, it gives a second opinion, and it also gives you time to think and sound out loud what you're thinking and rationalising it. Beware of anybody asking lots of questions about you, but hardly giving any information away about themselves. Again, remain connected to your support network. Remember, it's okay to prioritise your own boundaries. So your information is your information. What you want to share is entirely up to you. And remember, your financial situation is personal and you don't need to explain that to anybody. No one needs to know how much money you've got in your bank, what shares you've got, what investments, etc., etc. That's personal to you. So never feel responsible for resolving a problem which is not yours. So it might be very sad and it might be very difficult for the person you're engaging with has got an emergency. It's not your emergency. Sending the money again, never do it. Never transfer money on their behalf. Is a big common trend now about purchasing and sending codes from gift cards such as Amazon's iTunes vouchers, because they are obviously very valuable to criminals. So again, if someone's asking you to do that, that's a big red flag. Never to agree to send or receive parcels on behalf of anyone or else as well. Again, a common theme, particularly fraudsters operating abroad, will target people in the UK to act as a conduit. So another victim is probably unlikely to post cards or parcels outside the UK, but if they're asked to send them to the UK, they'll be less suspicious. And that means the person who is being used for that purpose is essentially being used as potentially a money mule on behalf of the criminals, and that can have devastating consequences. So keep your personal documents safe, never take out loans or credit cards on behalf of anybody else, regardless of promises to pay you back. So even if they produce evidence showing that they've got lots of money and they can pay you back, that's probably fraudulent. And if they've got lots of money, why are they asking you to borrow money? So it's all about having these rules to protect yourself. We'll move on to some publications, and I'll make sure these are available to you in digital form. There's also hard copies available that we can send out to you. So Thames Valley Police produce a very comprehensive fraud protection kit, which is full of tips and tips and tricks on how to protect yourself from becoming a victim of fraud. So it covers all types of fraud. It's a nice flow chart, step-by-step guide on how you can protect yourself. Lots of useful information and numbers on where to report stuff. Lots of ways to assess your own information to make sure you're actually keeping yourself safe online and keeping your account safe. We also have another publication about staying safe from romance fraud, using the language that is used by romance fraudsters commonly to target victims, which you can then use to increase your awareness and empowerment to ensure that you don't become a victim of these two types of fraud. So that is a whistle-stop tour of high harm fraud. Are there any questions? Remember, it's time, and I'm happy to take questions on any types of fraud.
Okay, thank you very much, Duncan. If there's no immediate questions,
I think
Melanie Randall has her hand up.
Got her hand up, but I was just going to say, Duncan, if it's all right, would you mind if we come to questions at the end? Just because then I can enable everyone cameras and microphones. So we'll just take those at the end if that's all right.
Absolutely not a problem at all. I'll stop sharing now and look forward to listening to the rest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Duncan.
Thank you.
Okay, Linda. So you just need someone to put the sound on.
Yes, thank you. I'm just sorry, bear with me for just 1 minute. And I haven't shared yet, have I?
No,
because
not
you
yet.
can't see them.
See that now, Linda?
You can see that, but I'm not sure I've done the
What, the audio?
yeah. Okay, we're gonna plough on because I'm not sure that I have though. How do I get back out? Sorry, bear with me, everybody. Apologies.
So you just unshare it. Let's go back into the Teams. If not, Linda, just oh, there you go. You're out of it now. So yeah, just click the share button again, and then before you actually share the screen,
include sound.
there
I've
you
got it. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. Yes, so that's me. My name's Linda Crowley, and I'm a trading standards officer with Bucks and Surrey, as I said earlier. Today you will learn what a scam is. You've heard from Duncan, obviously, with regard to those frauds, and we're going to talk about some other different frauds, the common types. Find out where to go for help and what support is available from Bucks and Surrey trading standards, and obviously if you're from outside of Buckinghamshire and Surrey, other trading standards will have similar material, obviously, and you can ask about those, and I'll do my best to answer on their behalf too. So, as Duncan said, anyone can be affected by a scam. We're all susceptible to it. It doesn't matter who we are, and we can be, at a vulnerable moment. It's not, vulnerability is not a permanent state. It's something that we go in and out of based on a number of factors. So it could be that we're going through a divorce, we're going through a cognitive decline, we're lonely, and all these things can affect our judgment in the moment. So, as Duncan said, anybody can become a victim of a fraud. And scams or fraud, and those things are interchangeable, are the product of organised criminals, essentially. And they use all these skills to exploit us and to coercively control what we do. So we need to be one step ahead. So to get people hooked, initially, certainly, I think 10 years ago, for example, none of us really talked about scams, and definitely then there was a big shame element. So a lot of these things were underreported, and people were embarrassed to talk about them because they did feel that, they'd been stupid, which is not the case, because as we've explored already, these people are very organised and they're very good at what they do. So all these elements can lead to us becoming in a vulnerable position, and sometimes people don't even know that they've been conned. Certainly with people that have been romance victims or have been persistently visited by somebody and a relationship has ensued from that, they may not even report it. So, as we said, all those circumstances lead to us becoming engaged with scammers, and it's a bit of a cycle. So certainly with, for example, postal scams, and we'll go on to discuss that in a bit more detail in a minute. If you respond to a letter which is from a fraudster, which is about a scam, it leads to you losing money, and then once you've responded to that, your personal details are added to what scammers call a suckers list. Horrible expression. We don't use it, rest assured, but it gives you an indication of the sort of person it is that uses that expression to refer to all of us as that, and they target the individual. The person then receives more scams, and so it goes on. And the consequences of falling for scams, as Duncan's already said, can lead to all these elements. People that have been, for example, had a doorstep crime, which again we'll go into in more detail, are 2.5 times more likely to end up in care than their counterparts, because it is so damaging, not just financially, but emotionally, and your self-confidence can get damaged by it severely. So, postal scams. By this I mean the sort of post that you may get, which is a catalogue, for example, which says that you can win £300,000 if you respond and buy some goods from their catalogue. And that's the hook. You will get, with the catalogues, you will get the goods, but they'll be extremely expensive, and they may not have been tested. They might be vitamins that actually don't contain any vitamins at all because they're produced elsewhere. So all these things are false around false claims. They could be people that allege they're psychics or clairvoyants. And all the letters I've ever seen of all psychics and clairvoyants, very good looking. You never see an unattractive person on these mailings, may I tell you. So people respond to pay for amulets from people that claim they can predict the future or bring you good luck. And all these are around you benefiting financially. So these are what people have said to us following on from them responding heavily to postal mail. And they're just a few types of the ones like catalogues, psychics, clairvoyants, allegedly Australian lottery, Canadian lottery. All those things are what we would say is postal scams. And these are the reasons why people respond to it. Now, one of the ways that we have tried to change that behaviour is becoming a scam marshal for us. So, for an example, I went to visit with a PCSO a few years ago now, a lady in Tandridge, who, when I left the property, the postman was delivering her mail and she had 30 letters coming to her door. All of those were scam mail. So she had her dining room table set up. She had her checkbook there. People still wrote checks back in those days. And she was sending 30 checks in this case. And so if we work on that as an average, and the average money being asked for by the scammers was £30, for example, that's £900 a day she was sending to these people that were sending her the letters. She was lonely. She was an intelligent woman. She had worked in the city and she was bored, really. So what I encouraged her to do was to become a scam marshal for us, which meant that instead of sending the money off to those scammers, to all those 30 scammers, that she actually sent the money to the National Trading Scams team with the envelopes so that we could get the information about where it was coming from, who was sending them, so that we could try and disrupt that and stop the mail being sent as it came into the country quite often, because a lot of these come from abroad. And so they send off the mail, as I say, but also it gets it out of the house. So they don't even open it, they just send it, the whole thing, in a free post envelope to the national team. And it also encourages them to talk to their family and friends about what they're doing, that they're volunteers for us, that they're scam marshals for us, that there's some kudos to that, and they're doing something positive. And when I went to visit her again some 2 years later, because her name appeared yet again on a list that we had, which was suspicious that she may have been responding again, I went to visit her, and I was thinking, oh no, she's still responding. She's probably got, tons more mail. But actually, she proudly told me, no, I'm a scam marshal. I work for you. I don't send anything off anymore other than to the National Trading Standards scams team. And coincidentally, and it sounds unlikely, but it's true, as I left that day, the postman was also coming. There was one letter, and it was a legitimate letter. It wasn't a scam mail. So for her, that worked really well. So if you know of anybody that's getting postal mail, let us know and we can recruit them as a scam marshal for us. Telephone scams, they, I think, really shot up during the pandemic, certainly. We were all at home, weren't we? And we were all around to receive phone calls. So there were absolutely loads, and there are loads of people getting telephone scams. I myself have had lots recently. I think I'm reaching a certain age where I'm on a list somewhere. And so we also provide call blocker services to people that are getting scammed over the phone. And here's an example of one which hopefully you can hear. Natalie, please let me know if it doesn't.
Have to press 1 to get connected to the officer of HMRC. If in case you don't press 1 and your call is not connected to us, then the warrant will be issued under your name straight away and you will get arrested shortly.
So I don't know whether you've had that one, but I certainly have. I've been threatened with arrest on that, with that sort of phone call a couple of times now. Clearly, HMRC would never ring you like that, in that way. If there's anything to be said from HMRC, they will write to you. So obviously, as Duncan said, all those things, ignore, or put the phone down. Sorry, my voice is going. So yes, just put the phone down.
Have to press 1 to
so as I said, we've got some call blockers which we will get fitted for you for anybody that's getting those sort of calls on their landline. We install a true call blocker. You can get call blockers actually for your mobile, but we don't supply those. So that would be a private purchase you'd need to make. We very recently put the application online, so you can now go onto the Surrey County Council website to Trading Standards, and you will be able to fill in an application there for a free call blocker for a landline phone if you know anybody who's getting scam calls or is vulnerable to them, and they really do work very well. We've had very positive feedback from people that have had them installed. And they are separate and they plug into the back, but they can also be, they filter the calls. So what happens, they're different from a lot of things, and I'll briefly explain how they work. We enable when we put them in, and we can add numbers afterwards, all the numbers that you want to hear from. So those family, friends, doctors, those people, and they will just come through in the normal way. They won't get a message. Nobody will know any different. But for those people that aren't on your preferred caller list, they will get a message which says something to the effect of that the line is being monitored. And if you're friends or family, you can press a number. Now, the cynic in me thought, well, that's what they're all going to do. But if you think about it, a lot of scam calls are, they ring via computer. So there isn't anybody there with a finger dialing the number or at least not very often, which is why automatically those ones will drop out. And so they will reduce scam calls by about 97%. You still have to be a bit on the ball because there will be the odd one who's from a hard sell company, for example, who may get through. So, but generally, as I say, they will reduce it by about 97%. Text scams. Again, I'm sure we all get these. Here's some examples on the screen. Good rule of thumb, do not click on any links because generally these are a phishing exercise where they are out to send you to a rogue link, and they will then try and harvest your personal details from that, or lead you on to another hard sell. So if you get any spam texts, can I please ask that you forward them to 7726, where so the intelligence then can be gained. And it's all about, we need to make an environment where we can all report the scams, where we can all talk to each other about the scams, so that we all raise awareness and therefore the scammers don't win. Because in the past, the way that they have successfully carried on is because people are so ashamed, or they're told to keep it quiet, and they do. And so we don't talk about it enough. So I would suggest that if you get anything like that, be very suspicious, do not respond, and forward it to 7726. Similarly, with fake emails, there's loads of those going around as well, aren't there? And if you want to, you can hover over the address at the top to see what actually it may be in reality. So there's quite a lot of scam ones from TalkTalk. There's an EE one going around, which I've had recently. And if you look at the address, on first look, it looks legitimate, but actually there might be another dot where it shouldn't be, or one letter is slightly different. So you need to look in a lot of detail, and also what they're asking for. You know, would that be a genuine thing? Is it an offer of a prize? Is that really likely? And if the answer to all of those, or even some of those, are no, then please report it. If you have any suspicions, to report at phishing.gov.uk, and that's phishing with PH. Fake websites, similarly, this is obviously quite an old one because it was during the pandemic when the NHS was being copied, basically. But it's just an illustration of how clever they are, because you know the colours are right. So a lot of people were, you know, duped by that because it did look very legitimate. And again, you know, question, is that actually going to be correct? They copy it very successfully. They're very good at what they do. So we need to be as good about questioning them. And as Duncan said, you know, taking some time. Let's not be pressurized into responding to these things. Let's not be worried into doing it. Let's step back, think about it, take some time, speak to a friend, check it out before you respond. Digital safety. Now, I don't know about you, and I'm a golden oldie, so I'm on Facebook still, but we are all and can be guilty of putting far too much information out there in social media. And this is just an example of somebody who's giving out a lot of information inadvertently.
What day is it?
It's my birthday.
it's good to share. But check you have the right privacy settings, or someone can make a lot of money from being you.
And as you can see, and I'm sure on Facebook, the reference I made to Facebook specifically was that I get a lot of my friends passing round that those Facebook things that come up on your feed, which say, what's your favourite pet? You know, what was your first pet? All information where they're playing a game to try and get you to respond, to piece together what may be your password. Again, they're very clever. So it's about being very guarded about who you share that information with. And as a rule, please don't fill out those quizzes. They don't form any purpose other than sharing information with potential scammers. Top tips, and we've said it already really, but never disclose security details. Don't disclose any PIN numbers. Duncan was talking about the courier fraud. One of the elements, and it rings bells with me because I had one for the first time about 3 weeks ago. It wasn't a courier fraud, but it was somebody pretending to be my bank. They were asking for the code that had been sent to me, actually from my bank. But what it was that they tried to purchase using my card for a holiday actually. So it had triggered that response from the bank, and they coincided their call with my text. And they were very believable. I mean, I do this for a living, but they were very believable. However, you know, I don't assume everyone is genuine, and obviously my job teaches me to be very suspicious. So I said to him, I'm not giving you that code or doing anything until I've rung the bank even. And when I did, of course, I said that and he hung up. So that just confirmed my suspicions. But they're very believable. So you need to be suspicious as a rule of thumb, and not be pressurized into responding quickly. So with friends and family, you know, if anything like that happens to them, can contact your bank straight away to get your bank details changed, your card changed, as Duncan said, and report it to Action Fraud or the Citizens Advice Consumer Helpline. Action Fraud, really for reporting the crime. Citizens Advice Consumer Helpline will put people through to trading standards where those trading standards can provide more support. So certainly if it's within Buckinghamshire and Surrey, we'll go and visit that person and see if we can provide any of the practical elements, some of which I've mentioned and some of which I'll go on to. We just done that. I'm sure my thing keeps going backwards. So we're coming on now to doorstep crime. This is a video around a case which happened 2 or 3 years ago. Before we played this video, which was about an elderly couple, both in their late 80s. He was a retired architect, and they had a devastating experience, both financially and emotionally, and I'll play that in a minute. I was also going to mention that we also had another investigation 2 or 3 years ago with respect to a certain Hughie Smith. I mention him because my colleague, who was the investigator in that case, was on the television last week. If you want to catch up with that case through the television, it's on BBC iPlayer. Little Big Crimes, Series 2, Episode 3. And Hughie Smith, who was he's a repeat offender. We've come across him several times. and we prosecuted him about 10 years ago previously as well, where he will typically turn up at someone's house. He will offer to do something like rendering or painting, and he will be extremely expensive, which is quite typical of a doorstep criminal. This is the sort of type of doorstep crime we're talking about. But we'll also go on to talk about, you know, limited companies who use hard sell techniques to get more money from you. In this first instance, the one that I'm going to play you the video of, and Huey Smith, they tend to turn up in person or perhaps following on a flyer. The work initially will start off at a fairly reasonable rate, and then it will be increased. So with the Huey Smith case, that, as I say, was on television last week, he started off with prices around 2,000, and then they went up to about 200,000, and he was offending all across Surrey, Sussex, Brighton and Hove, Kent, the whole of the southeast. So they tend to travel quite a bit. So as I say, if you want to catch that, it's on iPlayer. And this is the video from my colleague, David Bullen.
Tom appeared and said, "Don't panic. We've had a disaster." I was in shock. I just couldn't believe the wall between the living room and the hall could just crumble.
It was the worst example I'd seen in my sort of 15 plus years in trading standards. It looked like a bomb had gone off in the living room. The wall was just completely destroyed. There was dirt, rubble, dust covering the entire living room, bits of broken brick. The ceiling was sort of propped up with aqua props. Well, it didn't even look like a building site. It looked like someone had gone in there and just destroyed the living room and just completely massacred the wall. They were at the house for a few hours and they returned home. They walked into the house and the first thing they would have seen is the wall between the living room and the hallway had been destroyed. That was the catalyst from the price going from what was originally probably a fair price to a completely and utterly astronomical, unreasonable figure for additional work, most of which was in no way required. I think looking at the gravity and the seriousness of this case, the only fair outcome was ever going to be a custodial sentence. And I hope it also sends a clear message to any other people that might be tempted to perpetrate similar crimes, and also that, you know, trading standards in Buckinghamshire and Surrey will investigate these matters and will bring these cases to prosecution. There were other pressing needs within the property. We realised that they didn't have running hot water upstairs, so we made initial attempts to get basic amenities provided, and then we worked with adult social care to ensure that they were safeguarded moving forwards, and actually then we worked to help them identify reputable traders who could be brought in to actually complete the original plans they had.
We would like to thank all involved from saving us from ourselves. Trading Standards enthusiasm for their profession and dedication to their work showed no limits.
Yes, scandalous case that the lady concerned in the couple there, she was, as I say, 89, and she was carrying buckets of cold water upstairs without a handrail because she you know, they demolished so much of it, and they cut off the water supply upstairs as well. Absolutely shocking. The other type of doorstep crime that we'll explore as well is the sort of the quasi-legitimate. They look a bit more convincing in that they might be a limited company, for example. And if you were to look them up on Google, you might find that, you know, they're listed on Companies House. So they have this sort of semi-air, perhaps, of being more legitimate than the people that just turn up at your door. And there was an operation which we looked at called Operation Vulcan. It was around, it was a limited company that were based in Bournemouth. And the person who acted as a director, although he was banned from being a director, so he shouldn't have had that post, was a man called Adam Roberts, who formed a company with sales staff who were extremely keen to get the commission that they would get from selling. And his company, to all intensive purposes, which traded as Eco Energy Advice Limited, was set up to convince people to put in Icynene insulation foam in their house. They repeatedly targeted specifically people that were older. We came to know of it because there was a lady in West Byfleet who was in her 80s and who had dementia. And she'd been cold called, rung initially, an appointment made for a very short time as in very soon after the phone call was made to when the visit was made. So no time to discuss with her family whether that was a good idea or not. The salesman turned up at her house, convinced her that she needed to have this work done. It was several £1,000s for it to be done. And we found out about it via, I think, a family member, actually. So a colleague of mine managed to get it cancelled for her, the appointment, so that that the whole thing was not actually installed and she got her money back. However, 2 months later, the same company with the same salesman went out again to do the same thing again, because they knew that, you know, she had dementia and therefore chances were that she might sign up again, which she did. And this time that we didn't get to hear about it, and they installed it into her house. So for those of you who don't know, if anybody does any work at your house, whether you've asked them to or whether they come unsolicited, i.e. without you asking them to, you have 14 days in which to cancel that contract without any penalty before the work starts. So all traders should give you a piece of paper with that information on, saying that you have 14 days in which to cancel. And if they don't, that in itself is a criminal offence. So bear that in mind for anything that comes. We can then prosecute them if we know that they had been advised and they knew they should be doing that under the Fraud Act, because they failed to disclose what they should have done. This is photos taken from an installation of the Icynene foam in a loft. This is a thermo picture of it after it had been installed. So as you can see, they put the foam in the left-hand picture, you can see up in the loft, but they didn't put anything at the end. So actually the blue that you're seeing on the right picture shows that it's still cold. It's not actually insulating anything. And with a lot of these, they're very current at the moment, all these green type phone calls where they're saying that they can insulate your home. We're all paying huge bills, aren't we, for gas and electricity? So it's very fashionable to try and imply that we could save money from having things like this foam installed or other green type issues. So there are a lot of rogues operating in this field. And if you get a phone call from somebody, I would treat it with a great deal of suspicion before I would say yes, because as I say, there are a lot of rogues in this area operating at the moment. And also with some of this spray foam, actually it is bad for the roof space because actually it doesn't allow it to breathe and it can cause rot in the timbers and cause damage. So again, be very suspicious. Just to give you a summary of that case, it did go to court, and Adam Roberts, who was the person who was already barred from being a director but effectively ran this company, was sentenced to 3 years custody and made sure that he was barred again from operating in this field. He benefited to the amount of £1.5 million over his trading periods before we got involved, and the money was returned to traders when he was successfully prosecuted. So it was a good outcome in the end. And again, he traded across several counties in the southeast, and as I say, was based in Bournemouth. And when we went to do the warrant on the property, he had a very nice Aston Martin parked out the front. Okay, so that's looking a sort of brief overview at some of the doorstep crimes that are out there. And what we've tried to do to try and raise awareness and to make sure that people aren't cold called in that way is we've produced a couple of leaflets. The one here on the right of your screen is the No Cold Calling pack, which you can put on your door. It has a sticker, which you can see there, the yellow and black one, which is supposed to help people with poor cognition or dementia. So that it's a reminder to them and to people that call at their door that they don't deal with people who turn up. And so it's about really empowering you as the householder to say, go away, I've got a yellow sticker, I don't deal at the door. So it's not, 100% invincible. It's not that you're not going to necessarily get a rogue, but it will reduce the amounts that chances that will happen. And it's very much about empowering, as I say, the householder to say, go away. And it is a criminal offence if you ask them to leave and they don't go. So if they don't go, which is why the law was brought in this respect, it's about trying to deter cold callers from ripping off people who might be at a vulnerable point in their lives. And then we also have currently some scam sticker packs, which have also got some stickers inside and some information about some scams. So if anybody wants those and you're in Buckinghamshire and Surrey, we will send them out to you. Please let me know. You've got my email, I think, from Natalie, copied me in to the information she sent out earlier. So please let me know if you want any of these packs, or the leaflets also about the True Call blockers we can also send out. So reporting it, if you want some advice or somebody you know would like a visit from us to support them through any of these elements of scams or fraud, then please dial the 0808 number that's on your screen now for Citizens Advice Consumer Service. And similarly, to report a fraud or a scam, the action fraud number is also on there. And as it says, please do contact your bank if you think that you're vulnerable to some sort of breach. So, congratulations, you're now a friend against scams. Yay! And what's next is that you can become a scam champion if you would like to, which is somebody that we can further train so that you can be a volunteer for us, or you can take the information that I've talked about today with the help of some resources that we can provide you with and become a scam champion. We've got a course running next week on the 24th of April. So while you're in the mood, if you are in the mood, please feel free to join that next Wednesday at 10:30, I think. And that's on Eventbrite as well. And if you have any questions, I will stop sharing my screen and Duncan and I can try our best to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
What I'm going to do is literally just I'm going to stop recording now. Ahead of questions, so stop recording.